Let's finish rigging the eyebrows. Okay, so now we need to take care of the eyebrow geometry. And remember, there's no need to bind this at all. There's a much faster way of doing this, and that involves using a mesh deformer. So what the mesh deformer does is it creates a cage we can work with to deform the object that it's tied to. We use this also in our cartoon character rigging series, so you can take a look at that. We discuss a very cool technique for skinning a jacket using this deformer. Alright, but let's go ahead and get started. Let's first go ahead and collapse a few things in our objects manager just to get to the objects we need to much faster. I'll now go in and unlock the face, and now we can go ahead and bring back the brow geometry. Okay, great. Alright, so the next step is to go ahead and add the mesh deformer. So let's go ahead and start with the left brow. With that selected, holding down Shift, we can go to our deformer menu and find the mesh deformer. Alright, it's a good idea to go in and rename this, so we'll simply leave the prefix mesh and we'll add L_eyebrow at the end. Alright, great. So if we were to move over to our attributes manager with this node selected, we can head over to our object tab, and here's where we define what mesh needs to drive the deformations. So how are we going to do this? Should we tie the base head directly to this cage list? No, instead what we'll do is clone the head, keeping its history, and then add the clone head to our deform list. The reason why is once we add the head, it's actually going to set it to wireframe. Alright, so we need to instead create a temp head then that will follow the deformations of the base head. Alright, so in order to do this, it's just a matter of selecting our head mesh and cloning it. Control C, Control V. Next, let's go ahead and add this to the male face group underneath our base head. So make sure that's added right underneath, separating it from the base head hierarchy. So we're just, again, making sure it's under the male face group. Now we'll want to rename it from here so we don't get confused. That's going to be male head underscore mesh DFRM, to abbreviate deformer, 01. Okay, great. So this object here is going to follow the exact deformations of our base head. Alright, so with that said, what we'll now do is go back to our mesh deformer. Let's go ahead and lock this down, and let's go ahead and add that mesh we've just cloned to our cages list. Underneath advanced, what I'd recommend doing is taking the accuracy down to 0, so we have a one-to-one connection. With accuracy a bit higher, that tends to start smoothing the mesh over the geometry that deforms it. So we're going to lose the form of the eyebrow by increasing the accuracy once we use initialize. But sometimes this works out great if we're not too concerned with what happens to the object that's being deformed. If we're not too concerned with its size changing somewhat, well then we can start to increase the accuracy to smooth things out. But in this case, we do not want to do that. Now, for the deformation to work, we're going to need to use surface so that the surface of this mesh deforms this geometry. You'll see that if we were to go ahead and try to start using this, if we were to grab our brow control and start to move it, nothing's going to happen just yet, not until we initialize the deformer. So let's go ahead and choose initialize, and now watch this. When we go back to that same control and start to move it, the brow deforms, and it follows the deformations of the skin underneath precisely, which is beautiful. To test this out, we could always go in and smooth out the head. The first thing I'll do though is go ahead and hide the temp head. Let's just go ahead and hide that from the Objects Manager. Then we can go ahead and smooth out the base head. We can smooth out the brows and take a look. So again, watch this as we start to move it. Now, notice how the brow follows exactly the way it should. It's really exciting stuff. And notice it did not take much work to have this happen. It's another very exciting tool in Cinema 4D I love to use. Beautiful. All right, so that does it for the left side. I would like to point out that for the beard, we will need to recreate this deform head, because after we have created pose morphs, well, we'll still need the skin to influence the beard afterwards. So we will be removing this node, but for right now, let's keep it because it looks really cool. Okay, so let's say we go ahead and take care of the right side. It's the same steps we'll work with here. So with the brow geometry selected, we can go ahead and hold down Shift and add our mesh deformer, and then go in and rename it. So that's going to be mesh R eyebrow01. All right, great. So let's go ahead and unlock the Attributes Manager and then relock that so we can refresh this using the new deformer. And then we'll go ahead and add our deform head to this list. We'll set the accuracy to 0, external set to surface, and now we can choose initialize, grab some popcorn, and take a look at the result. Beautiful stuff. All right, there we have it. So in this lesson, we have learned how to work with the mesh deformer to very quickly skin objects that need to follow a deforming surface. What I'd like to do from here is just go in and disable the HyperNerves objects, just to go back to low res mode so we could just take care of that. There we go. We'll do the same thing for the head geometry. All right, so the next step then is to work on our eye rig. And we're moving right along. After the eyes, we can move to rigging the tongue, and then we can get to our morph targets. We have only a few more things to cover before our face rig is complete.